Welcome to From Mild to Wild and everything in between. Today's program, we're going to show you how we finish this truck seat, and we're also going to teach you how to make some spaghetti sauce. So stay tuned. Okay, we've attached the bolster to the bottom of the seat. We've done our sewing, and as I indicated, I didn't use the welt cording over here. I did some French stitching. It's top stitching right here. Gives it a very nice appearance when it's done. On the bottom, you'll be fastening your seat with hog rings. They're a U-shaped clip that you just take the little tool and you crimp them, and it'll fasten it right to the seat. I got to tell you a little story. Barry was in the other day, and I almost had to chain this down to the bench. Once he took a look at it, he was really happy with this seat here, and he wanted to put it into his vehicle then. I said, no, you can't. I said, I've got to at least have it for 5 minutes on a program to show the people how nice it did come out. When you take an overall view of this, you can see how the pleats actually go to the top here. It's not cut short. So what you're looking at is the pleat actually follows each other from the seat right straight up. So it gives you that nice illusion of a nice straight line going down. This fella here, we did this only because we had it available to show you. I want to spend some more time on showing you how to cut. Your pattern making is very important. It's something that it was really hard with this large seat to do it. So what I'm going to do is I've got some small seats over there, not for this program, but for the next two programs. I'm going to kind of concentrate on showing you how to cut to get yourself a good pattern. I think without any further delay, we should really get into making this spaghetti sauce. I want to tell you, when my grandmother was alive, I wished I'd have paid closer attention to when she was cooking things. Everything to her was very easy, but she had done it for a lot of years. And she always used to do a pinch of this and a pinch of that. Well, I got to tell you, my two aunts took my grandmother and they measured that pinch. They actually says to my grandmother, take a pinch of that and put it in a measuring device so I could see actually how much are you putting in. Because you're going to see you can vary the ingredients in a lot of different ways, and it really depends on your taste. I want to show you a picture of my two aunts. Right here. On my right is my Aunt Frances. On my left is my Aunt Phil. Phil is short for Philomena. I always loved that name, but those are the two aunts that actually picked up and learned how to do my grandmother's cooking. I just kind of sat here and I do things by taste. This particular sauce that I'm going to show you, I actually came across a recipe over a year ago. My wife absolutely loved it. So needless to say, I write everything down. In that particular case, I only had one copy of it. It got misplaced. So we've been taking probably for the last few months, let's say, and we've been going through and trying to duplicate that same exact sauce the way my wife liked it. Now, not just my wife thinks this is the greatest sauce in the world, and I got to tell you, if we made 15 different versions of the sauce, they were all good to me. They all had a distinct taste or a distinct flavor. But I know my wife seems to like this particular sauce the best, so when I make it, I always make it to her taste. And it's funny because even my father-in-law, when I make the sauce, he always says, and send him up some, because he likes this. My kids will, you're going to see I make quite a bit at one shot, and my kids will take and get the little breads there. They'll put a little sauce on top of it, put a little cheese on it, hit it in the microwave, English muffins, I couldn't think of the name of them, and they have themselves a quick little pizza. So you're going to see you can use this sauce in a lot of different ways. I'm going to give you kind of a basic sauce depending on, or the way I like it. You can vary this. You can vary it to your own taste buds. But let's start off first. You're going to take over here, you want to get some crushed tomatoes. Now, I find that there's also a difference between the different crushed and peeled and whatnot tomatoes. Some have a little more juice in them than others. I prefer this brand because I can make some more sauce, and I'll show you. But you're going to take your crushed tomatoes. You got to put them in a blender. I take everything out of the cans and I put it into the blender and I kind of pulverize it. I want a nice thick sauce, but I don't want it chunky. So if you want your sauce to be a little on the chunky side, if that's what you prefer, you don't have to put it in a blender. I like it that nice thick gravy type of sauce where it just kind of, when you pour it over the top of the pasta, it just kind of hangs there. But I'm going to try to tell you as I go along the different variations to this sauce depending on what you would like. I'm starting off with the basics. So what I've done, I've pulverized, if you will, in my blender the 3 cans, and I'm going to use 3 cans of the crushed tomatoes. I also pulverized the tomato puree. It's a very thick consistency of tomato. I pulverized this using 1 can of that. And then I take the tomato paste. You don't have to do nothing with this. You actually have to spoon it out to put it in your container. Now, here's my pot right here. I've already added the 3 cans of the tomatoes, the 1 can of puree, and the 1 can of paste. Now these are 28-ounce containers, and this is an 18-ounce can of paste if you're looking for the right cans. Now to this, I've added all of this into this 8-quart saucepan. As I indicated, I've got a big family and they like their spaghetti sauce, so I always make a little bit extra, and I actually put it into like a 1.5-quart container and put half of it into the freezer. We use maybe 1 to 2 on a weekly basis, so I keep out enough to keep everybody happy. Now those ingredients are in the pan, and I'm going to add to that, I think I indicated to you, some of these particular tomatoes have got a lot of juice in them, so you won't need to add as much water as I'm going to add. Well, a rule of thumb with me is I actually take 2 28-ounce cans right here and add it in water. If you find that your tomatoes are a little more watery, you can reduce it because you've got a lot of water in the tomatoes. Or if you like a thinner or thicker sauce, you could either take away or add to. You're going to have to do it one time to see what your family thinks and then go from there. But at this point, I'm going to add the water. I'm going to end up, when I'm done here, with probably 6.5 quarts of ready-made sauce. Now to that, what I want to do, I like my onions. I went ahead and I've got 2 containers. I took 2 large onions and cut them up into small pieces. I'm going to add these right to the sauce here. Let me tell you, when I took the lid off of this container, I had one of these onions that actually made me cry when I was peeling them this morning. You'll find that every once in a while you get a real strong one. This is nothing, and you could add, well, I wouldn't say more, that's quite a bit, but for your particular taste, you may want to do 1 onion. There again, you're going to have to try it to get your exact taste, but I know for my wife, she likes it this way, so I'm going to give you the exact same recipe that I use for her. Now to that, I'm going to add, we're going to make this with meat. And what I've done is I've got, you can get between 1 pound and 2 pounds of sausage. And what I do is I lightly brown the sausage. I poke a few holes in this because I want to drain off all of that grease. See right here? It's just lightly brown, and what I do is I take and set it in a strainer after I'm done browning it a little bit and let the greases drain off. We're trying to eat a little healthier today. So by getting rid of that greasy fat, I'm at least trying to do my part. Now I'm going to put the sausage right into that sauce. I usually take, that's about 2 pounds that I've got right here. And I cut them up into about 6-inch sections, as you can see. It really doesn't matter. You can cut them up smaller if you like. Now, on top of that, I also took 4 to 6 cloves of garlic, and I chopped them up into about 1/4-inch pieces and lightly browned them in that same frying pan. You want to release the oils that are in there, so with the heat it'll actually release them. Gives you a very nice taste. Now I'm going to add the garlic also, and there again you can cut it up real small if you like. If you like the taste of a chunk of garlic when you're taking your pasta, that's fine. Or if you want a little smaller pieces, you can actually cut it up into a lot smaller pieces. A lot of this is kind of a guidelines to give you the right direction ahead into making this sauce. Now let's just say, for instance, you didn't want to use the sausages like we did. We'll call this a meat sauce. A lot of times I'll go ahead and not use the meat. I'll use mushrooms. And naturally I have to do, my son Giorgio, he loves the mushrooms, so I always put a couple mushrooms in. But if you wanted to take the meat out and just do a mushroom flavored sauce, you could do that also. As you can see, I'm trying to give you variations. This is a very easy recipe to throw together. Now what you want to do, it's not going to be a sweet sauce. What I'm trying to do is cut the acid taste from the tomatoes. So I'm going to put in 1 tablespoon of sugar. I've already measured it out. You see I've got it in the little container here. Just kind of pop that in there. Now I'm going to take, and you want to use a nice olive oil. I'm going to use 3 tablespoons of a nice olive oil. Very good for your health, the olive oil. I'm going to drop that right in like that. Okay, now we're going to get over into here. I'm going to take, that's a half, 1 teaspoon. You saw me use the tablespoon, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 3 tablespoons of the oil. Now I'm going to take 1 teaspoon. Now we're down to the teaspoon measurements, and if you want, there again, you may want to add a little bit more or a little bit less of these particular ingredients. I'm going to put 1 teaspoonful of the basil in. I'm also going to take 1 teaspoon of the oregano. I kind of pour it around a little bit. This way when I start to stir it. Also 1 teaspoon of the parsley flakes. Now, when we get into the bay leaves, here's how the bay leaves come. They come in a small container, a box like this, and you just take them out. They're a leaf. And you're going to find some have very large leaves in them, and some have the smaller leaves. Let me see if I can get out one. See how small, the large on my left and the small one on my right. You may want to use 1 of the large or 2 of the small. There again, you've got to kind of base it on what your tastes are, but you've got to start somewhere with this sauce. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw 2 small in there. I'll move the rest aside. Now, as I indicated to you, we've got all but 2 of the ingredients in there right now. I've been playing with this same mixture, just like you see me do on my engines. I sit here and I play different games, trying to add and subtract different things to them to give me exactly what I want. We, at one point when we did this, we were doing it 1 ingredient at a time, and we kept tasting it. And I only remembered at that point, when we were reconstructing this sauce here, that it was an hour into the mix, I had handed a spoon to my daughter and says, give this a taste and see what you think. And she says to me, well, it needs to be a little hotter. So we says, okay, well, we'll put 1 tablespoon of the pepper in, and it needs a little bit more salt, so we put 1 teaspoon of the salt in. Now that's where I want to bring you at this point right now. You've got all the ingredients in here with the exception of the salt and the pepper. And I think the day we were making it, just like I told you, you get these whims. On the day we were making it, we were doing it by taste. So as we kept adding ingredients and it kept cooking a little bit longer and they kind of married themselves together, we found that by adding the pepper after it had already cooked for an hour, the salt and the pepper, if you will, and if you want, you could actually leave the salt off, but if you're watching your diet, but it was actually an hour into the cooking process that we added the salt and the pepper. We've also found that if you add it at the beginning, it gives it a different taste again. So this is something that no matter what you're doing, you can vary the taste on your sauce depending on even when you add the ingredients. But let me kind of bring you up to what we're doing here. I want you to take your sauce. I'm going to kind of stir it up just a little bit here. You can see this is an 8-quart pot, and she's almost to the top there. Now what I want you to do is to put it on your stove. I want you to bring this to a slow boil. Turn your heat up on high, and as it starts to get warm, and you keep stirring it, you make sure that everything is going together real nice. But you don't want a heavy boil. You want it when the bubbles start to come up to the top and you just see a few bubbles coming up, then you know she's starting to boil. That's what I call a slow boil. Now you reduce your heat down. Now I found 2 different ways of doing this. If I have an electric range, so if I put it on low with the top on, I can just see the bubbles coming to the top. If I leave it on covered, I have to put it on number 1. So you'll even find a difference in if you cover the sauce or you uncover the sauce. But what you're looking for is a nice slow simmer or a nice slow boil, if you will. Now what I normally do is I get it up to boiling temperature, let's say, and I've stirred it continuously as it's starting to come up to temperature. Then when I reduce my heat, once she starts to slow down a little bit, I take and come back every 15 minutes and just kind of give it a little stir just to make sure all your ingredients are marrying themselves together to give you that nice taste that you're looking for. Now after it's been on the stove for an hour, now come in and put that 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of pepper, and this is going to give you the exact same sauce that I'm making right here. So what you want, I'm going to take this up now in a couple minutes here, and I'm going to get this thing going. But what you want to do is make sure that you don't boil this. You don't want to burn anything that's at the bottom of the pan. You want it to get hot and to bring the heat gradually up so you can get it up to temperature. But on the other hand, you definitely don't want to burn your sauce because that will give you a different taste also. So let me run by it again. You've got all the ingredients that we put in. I want you to put it on the stove, bring it up to a slow boil, let it come back down again, reduce your heat, and then stir it about every 15 minutes. Now, if you will, let's take a little commercial break here, and I'll be right back.
If there's a boat out there and he's stranded, that's us. We're out there, we're doing the job.
This is the real thing.
Yeah, anyone can be this crazy.
Boys earning their money today.
Now that's a resume.
Okay, now we've got the sauce upstairs cooking. I've got a few more minutes left on this program. I want to talk to you about pattern cutting. Now, I had indicated to you I wanted to get into a smaller piece because this truck seat is kind of hard for me to show you. It really doesn't matter if you're cutting this small corner or this large corner here. They're both done the same way. So once you learn how to cut a pattern, it really doesn't matter if it's a small, tight corner or a large corner like on this truck seat. The difference is I can show you much easier with this smaller piece, and you'll be able to see both sides of it and get a better view of what we're doing. Now, I happen to choose a real hard one for this particular show only because even though this looks very easy to do, it's not because of the material that they've used. This is the old set. I don't know if you remember the sets. They had the chrome stainless steel legs and back. They were virtually indestructible. And that's what this one is. What they did, though, is this material is a non-back vinyl. You can see how the corners actually stick up in the air. These were put on loose, and then you hit them either with a steamer or a hot air gun, and it actually shrunk it down over the seat. You had a nice tight fit. These lasted years and years and years. It's a very good material, but it's like working with a hard piece of plastic. To get a pattern on this one is very, very difficult. But we're going to show you how to do it anyways. This is what the seat looks like, and there's that walt cord right here. This is what it looks like. I'm going to leave this one together because I've already taken one apart. Now what I first did is I took this piece that I took off of the seat and I laid it down on my material. And I pegged it with a couple nails to hold it in place, and I rough sketched around this back here. See it? After I got my rough sketch down, and I allowed an additional ½ inch for my margin there, I went ahead and cut both the front and the back. They're two different cuts. They're not the same. Because you're working with a convex surface, you're going to have two different pieces to be putting together, but we'll show you that. Now, this is essentially what you end up with. Looks pretty close if you laid your back on, and you could actually, if you wanted to, you could take your back on the material. No, it doesn't come out right. See, you lose the corners. Don't try that one. Start off like I just showed you. Take that material, lay it down on the table, and rough sketch around it, allowing your ½ inch margin. You're going to end up with a piece similar to this. Now what you want to do, this is the front one. Let's just say you've got your front one done to that stage. Now here's what I told you. Those are those little upholstery tacks. See them? That's all I'm going to do is I set it on the, right on the material. One in the top, bottom. Now make sure when you put these in, you keep it to the outside edge of your material. You're going to have a ½ inch seam. So the hole that I just put in that material is not going to make any difference because it's inside the sewing area. Now, I like to use pencil. You could use a crayon. You can use a tailor's chalk. It really doesn't matter. I like a little pencil here. Gives me a nice line. Start right here. Work my way right around. You can see it only takes you, once you've got a pattern made, it takes you all of 30 seconds to make a second, a third, a fourth. If you've got 6 kitchen chairs, once you've taken and spent the first hour on that first pattern, you can make as many as you want in probably 1/50th of the time. Now I'm going to take my tacks out. Now can you see the lines on that? That's a duplicate of the first piece that we made. Now what I can do is I can take and cut that out. Excuse me, I've got to get some scissors. Just cut right on your line, and you'll find as you do a few of these, you can go either to the left or the right of the line to give you a little bit larger or a little bit smaller pattern. You're going to find that as you've done these, if you use that same one that I just used, your duplicate is just a hair larger than the one that you're marking it with, because your line is actually on the outside of your pattern. Okay, as you can see, I've finished cutting this piece. I've marked it with an F. This is the front side of your seat. I'm going to lay that one aside. You're going to do the same thing with the back. You're going to want a larger piece of material than what the original pattern is calling for. I'm going to show you how to true up your pattern as we get going here. First thing you want to do, there's a back. I'm going to fold it over. I want to find center. So what I do is I fold the ends in, come up to here, put a little snip mark in there. See that? That's the back. I'm going to do the same thing on the front. Line them up. Now I'm going to take, let me get my staple gun here. You remember I told you before I always staple them together. I'm going to take and put them face to face. See that? We're actually doing this inside out. And I'm going to go through and just staple them together. Now you're going to notice, see how the back is larger than the front right here? You're actually going to take with your thumb and forefinger and just walk those two edges together. Line them up. See it? Walk them up, staple them. Walk them up, staple them. You're more concerned with the outside edges lining up. Now, let me show you a quickie here. You're going to find a lot of times you're going to want to put some relief cuts in here. Just like that, maybe 1/8 of an inch to 1/4. What you're doing is if you've got an edge that is going around very tight, if you put a relief cut in there, it'll make the outside edge longer so you can get your staples in. You see that? Now let's continue on. And keep your staples to the outside edge of your fabric, because you want to go in there and sew. The first pass I make is a 1/4 inch in. I've got a little device set up on my machine where I can adjust how much seam I have. So the first one I go in there and put in is a 1/4 inch deep, and we'll end up putting a second one in at 1/2 inch once we've got our pattern trued up. Okay, now you've got it stapled. You can take a look at it and see if all your edges are square to each other, and these are. Now what you're going to do is take it over to your sewing machine and sew up put in that first stitch at 1/4 of an inch. Go ahead and do that. Okay, now we've gone ahead and sewed our 2 pieces together. I see that we're running out of time. We'll pick this up again on next week's program, but before I go, don't forget my motto: do drags, not drugs, and I'll see you at the racetrack.